Everyone, this is on, and I'm coming to you with this month's Connecting Codes video. So we are taking a look at what is happening for March 2025 in our world events. And for those that aren't familiar with my work, not your work, my work, what I do is I author a book every year. It's called The Code Journey. And each year a new edition is put out. It's a pretty thick book, as you can see. And it has insights for every day of the year. It gives us the opportunity to hold that divine alignment, spiritual connection, whatever you want to say, in there, working with foresight, working from a space of compassion, but also being alert and aware to what's happening. And I find with the currents actually help us to see through the truth. They help us to see who's standing where. And we can take a look if we're willing to be objective and take a look and say, here's where the currents are today, and here's who's standing in integrity, and here's who's not. Here's who's being aggressive, and here's who's, being sabotaged. And it kind of helps us to see through some of the um, illusions and optics and things like that that are attached to world events. And there's a lot of them. There really is a lot of them. And a lot of people think, well, if you're in the spiritual industry, you're helping people to, hold this God alignment or divine source alignment. Why are you dealing in world events? And in our world and times, people who are very spiritual people are staying very alert on world events. And I think that in some ways they go hand in hand. In some ways they don't. I really am not a huge political person in the sense that I don't like politics, but I do like being aware of what's going on. And I do like understanding things. And I think that that is important. And when we can work from foresight, then we can keep ourselves safe and we can be prepared and we can understand sometimes when something's orchestrated, when it's not orchestrated, when it might be nature. And I think in some ways, the way I'm working now, I'm trying to help us stay in a more objective point of view. And when I say that, that is to take a look and say, okay, here I am sharing this information with you. And, it's not about predicting a particular outcome of something, but it's about recognizing that the energy currents are going to, trigger people in different ways. And when this happens, we can be alert to when there might be nefarious activity going on, when there might be something bigger, when maybe we need to take some extra precautions and things. And that's just smart living. That is just good old common sense, right? You don't sit around and wait for the storm to hit before you realize, hey, the weather's turning bad or winter's coming on. Maybe we need to winterize things. I mean, these are just basic common sense sort of things that, allow you to be prepared to handle whatever comes up because we're not going to stop everything that comes up in the world. We're not going to stop corrupt people 100% from being corrupt. These corrupt factions, if we look throughout history of time, they have come and gone. And there's going to be times they're going to be very active and times they're not. But we can be prepared to deal with them. And the more we become prepared to deal with them and we keep that foresight alive, then the less we will be taken in by what they try to do. And that's just the reality. And I think in these days and times, we have to not take anything for granted. So many times people are promoted out there in the world, and we think, oh, this person's promoting them, and therefore they must be good. They must be doing the right thing, and everybody jumps behind them. But we need to realize that sometimes people are being promoted because they need to be in the spotlight so we can see what they're really up to. And I think that's part of what we're going to be seeing and recognizing this month. Likewise, sometimes people have been on the corrupt side and they've changed. And so we have to, again, keep this open mind. But what the code energetic patterns help us to understand is who's sitting where at what time. And when we do that, those people that are reporting on truth, those people who are staying on top of all of these world events and things like that, it's going to help them to promote the truth out there because they're going to know when somebody's turned, when somebody's not, where they are. And that makes a big difference for all of us. That helps all of us along the way. And by the way, if you do end up liking this video or whatever, leave some comments, put a thumbs up in there, um, subscribe to the channel, all of those good things. I forget to say those things a lot of times because I'm here to share information and I'm just not the big promotional person, I don't have a monetized channel and stuff like that, so I'm not profiting off of any of this stuff. I just want to help people be more aware, basically, is the key. And that helps our world. That helps everybody when we are. And to break through the illusions and the lies and things like that. And I just feel that that's an important part. No matter what you're walking, what spiritual path you've chosen, what personal growth path you've chosen, these are core aspects that are important. But again, I have a lot of people who are interested in world events. They want to see how they connect to the energetic patterns, and that's where we go with this video. So let's start out and starting with our monthly energy, and this runs throughout the entire month. So this energy that I'm going to talk about now is active all through the month of March. And what we're going to be seeing is we're going to be getting a lot of experiences that will teach us things. So this is part of the thing is we can't actually understand things fully or to have true wisdom about things until we experience them. And that means sometimes we're going to have good experiences and sometimes we're going to have really hard experiences, but that's how we actually learn is by that experience. And we want to realize that during this time, we want to take a look at who the real mentors are. And they're going to be surfacing. And I do want to differentiate mentors from our so-called experts out there. And they're going to be surfacing to help us to be successful. Now, we we have a lot of times when we have corrupt factions that are running things, people that don't have good intentions, let's say, running things, they oftentimes will roll out a whole bunch of experts. And those experts, they will taunt their fancy credentials and their education and this and that and blah, 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 blah. But in reality, a lot of them are created. They don't actually have true wisdom about what they're talking about. It doesn't matter because a lot of these credentials, they're paid for, they're handed out. They're just handed out. You don't even have to go to school for them. So this is why I don't give so-called experts a lot of credentials anymore. I mean, definitely there were times in my past that I would have said, oh, believe the experts out there, right? Obviously, these person have credentials and education and they must know something, right? But when we get down to the difference of mentors and experts, and experts are people who look good, they have a good image a lot of times. But that doesn't mean that they necessarily know, really truly know or have wisdom about what they're claiming to be an expert about. And the difference is that they don't have those real life experiences. So a lot of times we get I've heard it a lot where people are coming in to work on these different teams, for example, like with Trump, and people will come through and they'll say, well, these people don't have such and such credentials or this or that. And I'm thinking to myself, no, but they've got real life experience. And I'll tell you, I will take the person with 20 years active hands-on experience at something than I will somebody over just credentials. And you want to take a look at that, look at all the plane accidents that we've had, right? So I would much rather have somebody who, is flying a plane that has, a few thousand hours of flying experience over somebody who has been sitting in a flight simulation, learning how to fly an airplane and opening some books and has credentials and a degree, but doesn't have any time in an airplane. And I think most people would agree with me, right? You don't want somebody flying your plane that doesn't have actual experience flying the plane. This is a basic thing. So, when we look at this, this is going to be a great time for this month. And this is really going to help us to separate some things out. And it's very important during this month that we're not following people just because they are considered noted people or highly publicized people. And this is what happens a lot of times in these um, groupings and networks of people who don't have good intentions, is that they highly publicize whatever they want people to believe. Now that, what they're publicizing may have very little truth to it, very little credential, but it's just like any movie. If you put out a really, really good movie trailer, right? You're going to get a lot of people to go see that movie, and people are going to believe it's a good movie. Now, when they go see it, they may be really disappointed, but people don't care because it was all about getting people into the movie theater and making money off of them. Well, the same thing is true with people and these credentials. And so we need to make sure that we're not following somebody just because they're publicized. Matter of fact, I encourage people to go look out for some of the people like myself who don't. They're not highly profiting off of their podcast and their things that are putting out. Now, I agree. These people put a lot of time and energy into what they're doing, and people should be paid for it. But on the other hand, get down to the people that don't, they're not making anything. They're not getting sponsors. They're not doing things. They've just flat out got experiences, right? If you want to find out what the Holocaust was like, go talk to actual Holocaust victims and get the different points of views and perspectives that they had. That's where you're going to find out the truth on something, right? It's not going to be on whoever gets rolled out on TV or whatever some celebrity says. So we really want to be careful of these people that are put, you know, prominently in the public eye. We want the transparency, we want them sharing stuff, yes, but we just want it to be shared information and not like, oh, you got to watch this person. Oh, this person has intel, so we got to listen to everything they say. Again, most of those people, I say it almost every month, most of those so-called intel people are part of psyops, and they are not giving you the truth, and they are making a lot of money. And so, we don't want to follow them just because they've already got 1 million followers or 100,000 followers or, however many followers. We want to get the variety of different perspectives in there because most of those publicized people, they're not going to give you the real stuff, no matter what they claim or who they are. And we want to look to those that have, again, a lot of experiences, but maybe not so well known. Who has that field experience? If you want to understand what a war is, talk to somebody who's actually been in a war and not just training games, because training games are totally different than an actual war. We got to get down to the people with real experiences. So hopefully you can tap in more to those and do your research on that. Power battles we're going to see come up, and that's going to be between the corrupt experts and the false prophets. They're on one side. So, for example, one of the people we've just seen coming out a lot here, I'm recording this on the 19th of February, is Al Sharpton, connecting in with New York's mayor there. And so we're going to see a battle between these experts and false prophets and those who are true mentors and true information people. Why? Because those true information people are going to remove all of the power of these false prophets and so-called experts out there. They're going to blow everything up, so to say, in the sense of exposing the truth. And that's going to be a huge thing. So it's a battle to have control over us, and that's really what it is. One person, the true mentors want us to have our freedom and our ability to create our own successes, and these false prophets and corrupt experts who are in things for the money are trying to get control over us during this time. So we've got to stay alert on this. Now, corruption is going to be attempting to shut down self-sufficiency and remove rights to live freely. Now, I think one of the biggest places that will come under the spotlight for this is going to be the UK, because the UK is in a huge battleground right now to decide what direction they're going to go. And they've got a lot of dictatorial energy over there. We might also see more stuff come up on Zelensky. Again, we got to be careful about automatically associating people of countries and countries with their leaders, because you could go into almost any country and there's not a lot of countries where the people are fully supporting the leader. We've had a lot of dictators, and a lot of those dictators are being thrown out right now. So I think because the UK, for example, part of what's going to bring them under the spotlight is they have elections coming up, which I think, I'm not 100% certain. I think they're coming up in May, if I'm correct. And so they're just a couple of months out from that. And there's a lot of people wondering what to do. I've got friends over there, and I've heard from some of them going, I don't know where we vote. I don't know where we put our stamp to a certain extent. Other people are certain. Other people say, well, I like the concept of what's being created here, but I don't like the people that are being put up to be in the position. So a lot of this is going to be um, taking a look and saying, well, who is shutting down self-sufficiency? Because we know if they're shutting down self-sufficiency, they're working against God or divine source in the world. And so those who are shutting that down, that's where we're going to find the dictators. They're exposing themselves as dictators when they do that. And we must not lose our right to have a different opinion. I think that that is incredibly important uh, with things, that we don't want to lose that right. You know, there are so many people out there, they want everybody to agree with their viewpoint and the way that they see things. But those differences of opinions are very, very important. And we learn through those differences. And those differences help us. Now, we shouldn't confuse just a different opinion with people who are promoting narratives out there, people who are pushing agendas, people who just absolutely refuse to look at the facts of things. Um, but again, our differences of opinions, they almost kind of help keep us in balance or in check to a certain extent, right? And I've talked about this in the last video. These are the people that say, yeah, progression is great, but we've got to care for the environment and not wipe out our environment in that process. Or, yeah, the environment is great, but we can't, we can't put many lives in the country at risk for very, very small things too. And then remembering, of course, a lot of things that are promoted environmentally are not environmental. They're very destructive to the environment. So it's through these differences that we can have conversations and actually bring out true wisdom and really draw on those people who are true mentors for us, and not just the experts that people want us to listen to in there. And I think that that's a big thing. So this is going to be a big month for people taking their power back from dictators. And dictators will be stepping down, or people will be forcing them to step down. So again, we've got still countries out there where they're running under this type of an influence. And I think we will see more and more of them being brought down in the world and being exposed in there. Um, But even in the midst of this, I think what's going to be hard is, I think there are enough people that are starting to change their image. So again, we've got to look at that too. Who's just continuing to change their image based on public opinion or what the public is going with? And I think that we still have to be careful, because it's still going to be hard to tell who is truly for the people and who only says that to get more power and control. So we've got to stay alert to that. Again, we've got to filter through what we're being told and what the actual experiences are, what actions are actually being taken. And the actions are always going to speak louder than the words, as they say. Um, People may insist on resignations, yeah, from those that are supporting global agendas. So if you have leaders out there and they're supporting any agendas to depopulate, to massively infect people, to to release diseases, to practice gain of function, things like that. There's a whole bunch of things we could get into on that. But if you've got people that are supporting those things, if they're supporting people like Bill Gates and things like that, or George Soros, then people are going to be insisting on their resignations. And I think that's a good thing. I think people are realizing, hey, we don't have room to play with it anymore. And we've got to get firm and we've got to get strict on this. I think we're also going to see in March a lot of whistleblowers coming forth, and those in corruption, the people that have surrounded them, that have been close to them. I think they're going to be making mistakes. And this is going to be exposing again deep layers, more layers of the corruption. And people who have been in the inner circles of the corruption have come out of it, are saying, I can't do this anymore. We're going to see more and more of them speaking out, and that's going to be a good thing. From the 1st through the 20th in our monthly influences, um, again, we've got to be careful because people are not who they appear to be. We're going to have people that may appear to be friends or appear to be nice, but then they're really trying to sabotage people. They're just doing that to get closer to somebody. And these sabotagers, they're going to end up getting exposed. But the only way they really can be exposed is if truth and integrity is being upheld. So we've got to be willing to uphold the truth and integrity because it provides that contrast. And again, that way, when people try to sabotage those people who are standing in truth and integrity, then they can't really get away with it because it's just automatic exposure for them. And the true nature, the true personality, who people's true priorities are, that is all going to become a lot more visible. And I kind of relate this to like a 3-month relationship. We're almost, we're entering 3 months almost into Trump's term here in the US. And I always have a joke about that because I used to always say, I wouldn't find out what somebody was really like when I entered a relationship with him until I had been with him for at least 3 months. And then that 3-month mark was a real deciding factor, and their true colors really started coming out. So a lot of people, again, they can hold up images for a little while, but they can't hold them up forever. So um, we're going to see who puts their personal gain ahead of truth and integrity or the well-being of people, and doing what's right in things. And it's going to get interesting. I think it's going to get really interesting in there. Um, and we just have to hold our ground, really is what we need to do. I like to say, if we're standing in truth and integrity, most of the time we can see the lies and the deceptions because there's such a contrast to what we're standing in. And that's a big marker for me a lot of times. We're going to see more recognition and success for those that are doing quality work, who are making progress, and working with integrity. And we need to be celebrating this. So, I know we have a lot going on in the world. I know there's a lot of things. I can't keep up with everything that I see coming down the news channels and the social media feeds and all of these things. But I do feel that it's really important when we have successes that are benefiting people, that are really helping the average person, helping the people who are in need. We need to be celebrating that. When we are exposing the fraud and things, we need to be celebrating that. Now a lot of people want to go on these tangents about, well, what about all the jobs are lost? Look, they weren't true jobs to start with. And you know what? If you create hardships on 30 million people to have fraudulent crime rings for 40,000 people or 4,000 people, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. So I think this is going to be a big thing. And we're really going to see who's got their true priorities. And this is going to, I think, blow up even in some of the truther communities because we're seeing some exposure come out. I'm seeing just a few people exposing it. of some of the networks in the truther communities, and a lot of people will say, well, it's really great to have these alternative platforms and things like that. And I agree, but we shouldn't be blinded to the fact that those alternative platforms are also mostly about profit. And a lot of the people on these platforms are all just like the corrupt networks, all channeling funds back to each other in there. And so we don't want to be blind to that fact either. Networks are networks, and there's always going to be networks. And this is how cultures and communities have survived as they've supported their own. They've supported the people with like mind. There's religions like that, belief systems like that. It's going to happen and it's going to exist. We just hope that the networks that are in charge of things are actually doing some good and not just cushioning their own pockets, so to say, and that. So I think we do have to be careful of this and do stay alert to some of these things. And this is again, while I promote, get into some of the people who aren't as well known, who aren't profiting off of things. Because a lot of these people that are big time in the spotlight, and that includes people like Dan Bongino, that includes people that we like to hear from, that includes Joe Rogan and people like that. A lot of them would not be doing what they're doing if they weren't making a lot of money. And Dan Bongino has said that in the past. I mean, he's a capitalist, and a capitalist in the sense of if it's not profitable, he's not going to do it. So you got to take a look at some of that. Some of these people are doing these things, and it's great that they're doing them. But on the other hand, you got to realize they wouldn't be doing them without making a lot of money in it. So again, we're going to see more exposure, and we have to be open. As I say, you've got to be able to look at the reality of those you want to believe as much as those that you see as ill-intentioned. And that's a huge stepping point. If we are really to make the big progress, that's where we need to be. But we need to celebrate the successes, no matter who's making them. If our country becomes more self-sufficient, we need to celebrate that success. If waste and fraud are eliminated, we need to celebrate that success. So that doesn't automatically mean you support everybody that's involved in things or every piece of it, but we need to celebrate the successes that we are having in this. Now, whistleblowers, we're going to find in these first 3 weeks, remember I said it's going to be a big time for them coming out. Well, particularly in these first 3 weeks, a lot of them may not make it. They're probably going to be meeting with accidents. There may be deaths around them. We do have a lot of accident and death energy during this time. And, people who don't want them speaking up may make it look like accidents. I mean, we saw that in February with some of the plane accidents where there were whistleblowers on the planes that people were killed. And they were some of the people that were killed. We have to look at these things. And I think that there will also be deaths that will be used as distractions during this time, or to protect criminals. So this is kind of like, it's almost really like sacrificing somebody to just get the spotlight off of somebody else. And we know they're building up the Pope right now. It would be very reasonable for the Pope to pass during this first 3 weeks of March. They've been building it up of how much he's been in the hospital, how he's got pneumonia. So they've already laid the foundation for it to happen. And there doesn't seem to be anybody else that they are really promoting with heavy illness. So I think this may be a thing. And the mistakes that are made in this, I think what's going to happen is as they try to orchestrate these things, there will be mistakes that will be made, and that is going to expose those who have been bumping off whistleblowers and those who have been operating in these criminal ways and getting rid of people because they don't want to be exposed. So I think there's going to be some interesting twists and turns around deaths and accidents that are happening in here. We want to be very careful. I would stay away from protests during this time. um, in heavily crowded areas, if you can do it, we're more likely to see deadly accidents coming up in those highly emotionally charged environments, large crowds, but also around travel. So when I think about that, we're probably going to be hearing a lot more about accidents related to planes, trains, ships, buses, that are in large cities, metros, subway systems, where you've got a lot of people traveling. When we look at accidents around, for example, trains or ships, it could be connected to the cargo that they're carrying, or creating health problems, or even death or accidents or things, in certain towns. Like we saw that in areas like Ohio, not that long ago. Um, so I think that some of these things are going to be coming up as well. Again, things made to look like accidents that aren't accidents at all. And I think very little will be true, genuine, sincere accidents, honestly, with this type of energy presence. And again, it's really meant to take out some stuff. I think that death is going to also be used to create fear and to attempt to regain control. And I think that is going to come in the form of things like suicide bombers or killers, the proverbial sacrificial lambs that are used to make a point. And we've seen this like with Trump's assassination attempts or some of the other shootings that have gotten publicized. And the shooter was really nothing more than a sacrificial lamb in a bigger agenda. And I think we're going to see more of that. And of course, that's going to expose more. Well, do we have three-letter agencies connected to those people, which it seems like there always is. They're always connected. They always seem to have these interactions with CIA and FBI and different groups, right before they do these things, which is kind of ironic, really. So we want to be aware of that. Another reason to stay out of crowds, because the people that are doing this, they're going to go into the crowded areas to try to take out what they can, to take out a larger group of people, or they're going to go in and they're going to do whatever they're going to do, um, and they know they're going to die in the process of it. And you've got that with terrorists, when you're dealing with terrorists and people of that nature, people that are connected to a variety of groups like Hamas or things like that, they don't mind sacrificing a few people. And there are some religions and belief systems out there where they believe that they become very exalted in their belief system or their religion if they sacrifice their life taking out a lot of other people. So again, just if you're going to be out places, just keep that alert level up. You really want to keep it up. We need to transform this energy, this breakdown energy, this just hard endings and things like this. A lot of these hardships are coming because we didn't stand up in previous times, and now we've got to break through. So that's where we want to hold our energy, is on breaking through, holding strong, don't letting ourselves get broken down by what's happening in the world. And that's going to be a very important time. And if we can do that, if we can transform things and make the breakthroughs by taking our power back and removing the corrupt leaders, then that's where we're really going to win. And that's where the real breakthroughs come. Because again, you're always going to have some corrupt factions out there. It's just a matter of how much power and authority and rule that they have in the world. So if we get them out of positions of power and authority, if we take our power back and we stop letting them get away with all these crazy things, then we're going to be good. We're going to come along. That's how we make the breakthroughs on it. We're also going to be learning a lot about celebrities, images, so-called experts, I should say, right? High profile people, which are really created, and they're blackmailed and they're paid off. along the way. And this is the same thing with charities and foundations and philanthropies that we see going on out there, right? There's all these foundations and stuff. And a lot of this stuff is all about promoting an image to get people to support individuals or foundations or groups or things like that. And a lot of these profiles, these images are created, and people may be forced into them, they may be brainwashed into them, whatever the case is. Like you see a lot of celebrities coming out and things. I think about these groups where different things where they show the animals suffering. Oh, I hate that one. They show the animals suffering, and it's like all about playing on your nerves. But it's so little of the money goes to help the animals, and the suffering that's created to play on your heartstrings of those animals is even worse. And a lot of these organizations are not. Matter of fact, they may actually cause the suffering. And so we really want to take a look, and I think we're going to see more of this coming out about how people um, are doing things only because they're being paid for it, right? They're only speaking up for a certain agenda because they're paid for it. They're blackmailed into it somewhere. Um, they're being paid off in some shape or form. And so the images are created. And again, there can be something totally different going on. And I think some of these people actually are convinced and brainwashed that they're doing the right thing. I think some of them are blackmailed into it and they're scared to get out of it. And then I think other people are almost just like a hostage. And it's like you either do this or your whole life is not just destroyed, but we start taking people out in your family, your children, whatever. And these are very real threats that are put upon them. So again, I think we're going to be shown more about how these images are created. And that's going to make people, stop believing a lot of what is put out in front of them um, that they haven't personally experienced and known. Because I've known of many celebrities when I was growing up outside of LA in Manhattan Beach and California. And there were celebrities all the times that were being praised and, oh my God, he's such a nice person. And I, met him at this wedding or this or that and this and that. And I said, yeah, you have not seen the real side of him, what he's like when he's not, out in the public limelight, spotlight, whatever. And I oftentimes did get to see them in private party situations. I did get to see them in situations where they weren't and so ethical. And I saw the way they treated people and mistreated people and thought that they could buy people. And, you know, it's just, yeah, what's created and what they're made to look like and what they are can be so different, so very different. Now, getting on from the last week and a half of the month, the 21st through the end of the month, we're going to see likely an increase in caring about those who are truly struggling. So this humanitarian aspect comes up, and again, we have to be careful. Where are the true organizations? What are the false ones? Um, but I think more than that, what we're going to be seeing under this influence coming up in March is going to be about actually helping people. Now, this idea is already being floated as I'm filming this, and Elon came out and he's calling on Trump to do tax refunds for people. I could see where unfolding the corruption and all the wasteful spending and things like that, that there may be action taken to redirect that funding back to people who are in need, people who are on Social Security, who actually need it. They clean up the Social Security system, they get people who are dead off of the Social Security payroll. We may see a change in how much people are getting. We may be able to boost the people who are actually on it. We may see, as some of these funds are being recovered, and brought back into the, system where people may get something like a refund. So it does get into helping the people who are actually struggling, who are really trying to do something to help themselves but can't, or are in that position that they can't help themselves in there, and they're reliant on these things. And for far too long, and you look at almost any Social Security payment, whether that's from retirement things or whether that's a disability thing, most of those things, most of them will not cover the basic expenses. Now, some people in retirement, they've built up enough and they can live off of it, but there's a lot of it is not covering the expenses. So even small increases of a couple of hundred a month is huge for a lot of people that are living in that way. And it can be just enough to take the pressure off of them. Or, if refunds were issued, for example, that would be enough to help some people get out of debt or to get a car that allows them to go get a job or, a variety of things like that. And I think we're going to see a lot of actions taken that can bring some really strong successes. So we do want to pay attention to what actions are being taken during this time because there's a good chance they will go through and they will be successful. But the results may take a while for us to see them. So they're not going to happen necessarily immediately in there. So we may see something where we get an approval for a refund or something like that. But it may not actually be able to be issued for 3 months, 6 months, or whatever down the line. So it may take a little while before it can actually reach the hands of people and to get it set up and orchestrated in there. We're also going to see exposure coming to government connections into assassins. So what are the connections between governments and assassins that are going on? And how is taxpayer money paying for them? And this is going to be another thing, and this is going to be another trigger where people are going to say, no, that is not where my taxpayer money should be going to. My taxpayer money should not be going to assassinate people. My taxpayer money should not be going to government organizations to, take people out. That's no, no, absolutely not. And so we're going to see more exposure in those connections happening. We're also going to see initiatives being made to help people, to help animals, to help the earth. And I think JFK, or I'm sorry, RFK Jr. might be a big catalyst in that. I think other people are going to be involved in that as well. So those leading up our environmental groups are going to come more into the spotlight. But I think people are going to start to realize that, again, the things that have been promoted as green or environmentally friendly and stuff are not, and that there have been a lot of destruction to life, whether you're talking plant, animal, human, whatever, going on. And I think there's going to be initiatives made to protect people. We're starting to see some of that. Again, the requests are being put out there. Starting to see initiatives to get the mRNA stuff out of the vaccines, to drop some of the vaccines, to lighten up the vaccine schedule on kids. You don't have to be an anti-vaxxer to support that. I think that's a key thing in there. I think that, um, again, this is coming down to health and safety. And a lot of these things have not been about health and safety. They're not needed. They're not keeping people healthier. Um, and we need to look at that. And that doesn't mean that if people want to go get them, that's their choice, and it should be their choice. But it shouldn't be forced upon people unnecessarily in the name of profit. And that's where we've crossed some of those lines. So I think we're going to start seeing some things getting corrected. We may see some of the so-called green initiatives getting shut down during this time, or funding to them getting shut down during this time. And again, our money shouldn't be going to agendas. It should be going to things that actually benefit the people and support people in having a reasonable life. I'm not saying extravagant or high quality. I mean, just having a reasonable life and not having to be under so much struggle for things. So I think we're going to see that. And I think also we have a piece that is that we need to stay alert of. that people may come face to face with their own mortality during this month. Um, and that will probably bring the jobs into the spotlight, illegals into the spotlight, violent crime into the spotlight, um, terrorist organizations into the spotlight, um, food, air, water contamination into the spotlight. And again, I think with um, RFK Jr. being um, now being active in things, I think a lot of stuff is going to come up and say, look at all these, you know, not just little toxins in small amounts, but look at these serious things that don't belong in our food, and so I think we're going to see those things. And again, a lot of this will probably come by reducing the spending on them, by not funding um, spraying stuff into our air. Right there, we can save a whole lot of money and we can make things healthier that way. Um, Again, cleaning stuff up, not putting arsenic or things like that into food systems or water systems. And I mean, there's so much that has been going on. And so a lot of people are going to start to come face to face with the fact of, oh, okay, these things actually can kill us. These things actually are dangerous. They're not necessarily in our benefit. And again, sometimes we need these experiences to wake us up to the reality of what's going on in things. We're going to see people rising up um, and caring more about people unconditionally. I think this is a big piece because the actions people take during this month um, are going to be remembered. And people are going to remember whether you considered their well-being, whether you worked from unconditional love or whether you just worked for your own personal pleasure, gain, whatever. And I think more and more people are going to rise up from that unconditional love space and they're going to say, look, I don't care how you voted. I don't care, you know, about this agenda or that agenda, but let's get you the help that you need. And I think that's going to be a beautiful shift to see. We're going to really need to focus on finding balance and harmony in this month and removing the fear and the urgency and energy that could be present. And we need to think things through and not be so impulsive. So again, we have that corruption that's coming in, right? That wants to put us in fear. They may use death. They may use these proverbial sacrificial lambs to put us in fear, to get us to take action we wouldn't take, to do things without thinking about them. But we need to honor the time to think about them because a lot of these green agendas people just rushed into without actually researching them um, or knowing the damages that they would cause in things. And they were operating out of fear and urgency. And this has been promoted with a lot of environmental things decade after decade. And people get scared. Oh my God, the world's gonna, everything's gonna be gone, and we only have 10 years to love. I mean, how many times have I heard that narrative? I've heard it at least 3 different decades, 4 different decades, probably more than that, um, in life. And it's caused a lot of damage along the way. We need to take the time to think because so many people, I even heard it from people a couple of years back when people were, trying to fight some of the windmills and stuff around here, turbine towers and stuff. And people are like, well, we need to do something and that will be better than just waiting. We don't have time to wait. And I'm like, well, actually we do. And and actually doing something that is highly destructive of our environment and our health and things like that is far more damaging than not moving forward with something immediately. So we need to be willing to take that time to take those precautions and to think things through and not feed into that fear. We need to look at what's the balance, what's the harmony, what's the center point in things, where can we come out of the extremes? It's like negotiating peace, you know, nobody's going to get everything that they want. And we got to figure out what we can live with and where we can find a reasonable balance point that makes sense. Actions. So our actions, what types of actions are we going to see? What types of actions do we need to be taking this month? Well, all throughout the month, we're going to see a lot of people that will act from fear and not from love. And they'll be acting out of self-preservation. So when I think about this, I think a lot of those people who are operating with ill intentions will be turning on each other. I think they really will. They're going to get scared and they're going to say, I'm going to save my own skin. And as we get into these deeper and deeper layers and connections of things, I think we're gonna see people turn. And again, some of them formal whistleblowers, some of them not, some of them celebrities that were being paid to say one thing, and now they're going to say, no, I was being paid for this, and this is what they're really doing, and they're going to do it to try to save themselves. And I think that's going to be a big thing. Personal gain over doing the right thing and, having power over people as opposed to doing the right thing. Also, what we're going to see a lot of. And again, this naturally happens when you have people that have been acting as criminals, when you have people that have been doing not so nice things to the general population, putting their personal gain over the well-being of people, then you know what? They're going to scramble. They're going to scramble. And, when they come under the spotlight, it's going to get hard. It's going to get hard on them. And it's hard to watch it. But this is, again, where we get the experiences and we learn the truth in things. We're going to see a lot of lack of concern for how lies and manipulation hurt people. So a lot of these people, even if they get caught, they're not going to regret what they've done. They're not going to feel bad for what they've done. This is the nature of the psychopath. And a lot of these people that have committed the crimes against humanity, the people who have done these atrocious acts for personal gain, are really psychopaths. And that's not just putting a label on somebody, but that is the personality. They really have no remorse, no concern. They don't care how much has been damaged. They don't care how many people they have hurt. All they care about is their own power and what they have and what they're making and how much money. So it's going to be an interesting thing to see about that. So even where people are caught, even if they're held accountable, I would not expect them to have any any remorse at all, or any hard feelings, or any empathy for any of the people that have suffered from their actions. We're going to see attacks on those in truth and integrity, a lot of sabotage probably going on. So again, this is the corruption trying to keep itself alive. It wants to get rid of those people in truth and integrity. And unfortunately, that's probably going to be in the form of so-called accidents and things like that. These sabotage attempts could turn deadly for some people, and probably will. But hopefully we can stop them at the sabotage. And a lot of times, if people can hold the truth and integrity strong enough, if enough people rally around that, then the sabotager, the person trying to do the sabotaging, will expose themselves without us really having to take any serious action. And that's always a preferred thing, right? Is to let them expose themselves in there. A lot of connections, partnerships are get exposed. Now, we just in February, of course, had all the exposure around US, well, some say US aid, USAID. I think we're going to see much deeper layers. I think I think USAID was the surface, honestly. And I think that we're going to see these deeper connections, deeper partnerships. We're going to see more of it. We're going to see other networks of how they're tied into this. And again, we're going to see the corruption turn on each other for self-preservation. We're going to probably see uh, some of these people in the corruption networks that will try to disassociate from the networks and try to make people believe that they're done with it and they're not doing it. And we have to be careful not to buy that, honestly. Now, thoughts, where's the mindset, communications, things that are going to be probably promoted, put out in the media, talking points, things like that. what is happening just for the first through the third. So the first 3 days of the month of March, we're going to have a lot of truth coming out about things. And people may not like what they hear, but the truth needs to be spoken. And people are going to speak it, whether people like it or not. But here again, this is part of facing the facts and the reality of things. Lots of partnerships and connections, and we're going to see where there's betrayal and where there's support, where new ones, we want to pay attention to where new ones are being formed. So the thought pattern is, who do I need to partner with to connect to accomplish something? Um, who supports who and things. And we may find in here where people start betraying their partnerships and their connections, where they have only been in that connection for personal gain. And that also is going to be very interesting. But we also have this dynamic of families in battle with each other, like sibling rivalries, things like that. So we very likely could see people speaking out even against each other. So we could see, for example, um, Barack Obama's brother speaking out against him and things that he's done. We could see some of the Kennedys speaking out against RFK Jr. So this family division, and we may even have corrupt factions that try to bring out family members who don't agree with somebody. We've seen that right with Trump. We've seen that with almost everybody. There's almost some family member that doesn't agree, in there, and will get paid then to expose something, even if it's not true, in there. So again, some of that we're just going to have to watch and observe, I think, during those first couple of days and just kind of process it and say, okay, is this upsetting me because I don't like it, or is it upsetting me because it's actually not true? But in reality, most of the time we won't get upset unless it's, we're upset because it's something we just don't want to hear a lot of times. So we've got to keep that open mind. From the 4th through the 14th, the mindset is going to be focused on responsible and irresponsible spending. So I think we're going to see more coming through during that time in March, exposing this wasteless, reckless, fraudulent spending going on. And it's going to show where people have been responsible, where they haven't been responsible. We're going to find out where people are willing to honor their commitments and where commitments are going to be broken and where they've broken the promises. So that will go probably hand in hand with some of that financial responsibility, where people had an obligation or a commitment to the people to take care of them a certain way, but then they funneled the money someplace else. We know Social Security here in the States is a big under fire for that. They took funds from FEMA, which is supposed to help people in disaster situations, and gave it to illegal immigrants. We've seen that also with the Social Security system. So again, they broke their commitments to the people. And I think the financial irresponsibility and the exposure of that is going to show more and more of where these commitments to the people have been broken. We're going to see attempts to provoke reactions, possibly an attempt to create an insurrection of some sort, calls for violence for those people who are not in the corruption networks. And so we want to be very careful of that. We don't want people to provoke us into a reaction. We want to stop. We want to give it thought and say, how do I take actual action on this? We want to think before acting. Remember, I said that in another part too. We want to think before acting. We don't want to just jump in that impulsive way. And that's only going to backfire on us if we do that. We're also going to find that during this time, from the 4th through the 14th, that a lot of things are going to get blown out of proportion. So again, we got to implement that harmony and that balance and look at that, because most things, most narratives that are put out into the news cycles and the news channels, they are blown out of proportion one way or another. They're blown out of proportion. This is how they got everybody to buy into the pandemics. They blew everything way out of proportion. This is how they've managed to get control a lot of times, is by blowing something out of proportion. How many times do you hear, oh, Ebola outbreak, or this outbreak, or that's happening, or whatever, and then you get down to reading it, it's like one case that could not even be that, but might be food poisoning. Or, you know, so we have to bring it back into reality when we're listening to things that are being put out there. From the 15th through the 30th, a lot of breakdowns, a lot of endings on things. We're probably going to see people struggling a lot with the pressure of the world and what is happening, and a lot of people feeling like they can't handle it. We need to kind of lift each other up. We need to help people break through things, and to realize that, sometimes you've got to break things down. You've got to dismantle them so that you can recreate a stronger structure. You have to sometimes tear down what is crumbling, in order to bring in stability. So sometimes you have to use the opposite of what you're headed towards to get to where you're headed in there. And so if we keep that in mind, I think that's important. And that a lot of the endings that will be happening during this time are designed to help us move forward. And they're not about holding us back, tearing us down, any of that. It's really about helping to move us forward in a positive direction. And the experiences that we have will likely have a major impact on people. And this can lead to major change. But a lot of the experiences are going to hit people, again, more intellectually, because this is coming in through our thought area and not the action area. So even though there are experiences and physical things happening, the experience is going to be more in the mind than it will be physically. So we really want to be careful of that, pay attention to that as well in things. And then on the 31st, the last day of the month, we will probably see a lot of productive action going on, a lot of holding people accountable for their job, for their choices, saying, look, you don't get to get paid if you're not going to show up. You know, we're not going to do your work just because you don't feel like it. If you don't feel like it, we'll hire somebody who will feel like it and who will be committed to what they're doing. So very productive action. I think that last day is going to pack a punch. I think we're going to have a lot of things coming out that are being done on that day. So we want to pay attention to that. Or even a lot of announcements of things. So we may see announcements of accomplishments, or we may see announcements of what is being set into motion and what is being worked on. So that could be also happening on the 31st. Now, moving into the soul cell, and a lot of people, they say, well, where's the soul cell play into politics? Right? But it does, because our choices, the things that are happening in the world, the things that we support, they definitely nourish that divine energy and that source energy, God energy, the soul energy. It has an impact on us emotionally. It has an impact on that inner self and what we need to be able to draw on. Now, from the first through the second, or the first and the second of the month, a lot of aspects of the past are resurfacing. So old connections may resurface. When I think of this in regards to world events, what I think we may see happen is people that we haven't heard from a while, that have been kind of dormant for the last few years, may come back up into the spotlight. So we may see more from frontline doctors, or we may see again, voices that are resurfacing that we haven't heard from for a while, and even just past aspects coming up. Again, things maybe connected to the pandemic or things like that. And a lot of people then questioning, that's going to lead people to question, what are we really supporting here? Again, a lot of completing of things going on. And this is always a good thing, because when we can complete things, then we can move forward, we can choose positive directions, we can make different choices. This keeps us from being fragmented. And when we're not as fragmented and we're living more in that wholeness, we can move forward with strength. We can handle a lot more things. we can deal with what needs to be dealt with. And we need to make sure that, you know, we're choosing things that are going to support spirit, God, divine source in the world. We're going to have this kind of competition going on that is going to push people to choose materialism or God, evil, good, earthly stuff, soul stuff. And that's going to be a choice that's going to be presented. And because that choice is being put front and center for a lot of people, again, we're going to find out who is really willing to do the right thing, where their true priorities are, and what they're really wanting to support, or whether they're just in greed and personal gain and insecurities and misery and trying to pull everybody else into those miseries. And again, we're probably going to see attempts to break the spirit, break the soul, so to say, and to cause suffering of people who have not been broken yet, who are trying to maintain um, good spirits and hope in people and things like that. And that may happen by threats of pulling funding or interfering with it in some way. So we need to be careful. This could be another repeat when we look at this as old things resurfacing, right? Banks cutting off accounts of truthers out there, or um, people who are saying we're not going to advertise with you anymore. We're going to cut all your advertising if you keep promoting optimistic things, that type of thing. And then people will have to decide, well, am I going to stand in the truth and integrity and move forward and trust that other people will come up and support me if I don't have that? Or am I going to cave into it? So lots of ethical choices having to be made during this time, those first couple of days. Then from the 3rd through the 27th, we're going to see a lot, again, these family challenges. And I think we're going to see some interesting dynamics of family members exposing other family members who have been in corruption or are in corruption and things. Materialism basically is seeking company. It wants company in its misery. These people who have relied on status, who live by status, um, they don't benefit when people stop praising their status in there. And in all honesty, because they are so materialistically absorbed, they really don't understand those who don't seek money or power or status. They don't understand those who want to do the right thing, who are willing to do with less to to feel like they're in that divine space, to feel like they're in that divine alignment, who will choose um, virtues over vices and things. We're going to see a lot of offers from materialistic people coming forward. Again, this is the dangling carrot. This is all part of trying to manipulate people and get them to um, work out of urgency and things like that. There will probably be timelines on it, but we have to be very, very careful of these offers that are being made, because there's probably going to be strings attached to it. And we must step up and deal with things during this time. So we must look at it and just say, you know what? A lot of these issues aren't going to go away even if we comply to certain things. If we comply to the corruption, they're not going to stop being corrupt. They're just going to make it harder. So we need to step up and deal with what is in front of us. And that is part of the soul process. That is nourishing the soul's energy, and that is nourishing divine presence or God energy in the world as well. So we really also want to focus on paying off debt during this time. So if refunds were issued to people, we want to take that money and we first want to look at what debt can I pay off with that. We want to look at, what our needs are, what responsible choices they can be. Like I know friends that they need to replace their car. So they're going to be looking at, well, if something like that came through, then wow, we could go get a new car or something. We could go put it towards this because they paid their debt off already. But that's going to be a big thing. Again, how responsible are we going to be with anything that we do get in? That's going to be very important. And we really need to focus on buckling down, meeting our responsibilities, our obligations. And this is a time where people are going to demand that those in positions of authority are meeting their responsibilities, are meeting their commitments and their obligations to the people that they are representing, or they will need to resign. And so we could see a lot of forced resignations as well, even in this time, if people aren't willing to do the work and they're not willing to be responsible with things in there. Now, the 28th through the end of the month, so those last few days of the month, we're probably going to also see some stagnation. So on one hand, we know there's going to be a lot of stuff coming out about productive action on the last day, but there's also going to be some stagnation and pauses and delays coming through where corruption is being blocked, being put on hold. Again, maybe some more funding being cut off from those areas. And this is all about shifting things into divine alignment, kind of like, okay, we got to stop you from spending so that we could stop and take a look at the budget and see what adjustments need to be made so that we can get you out of debt, for example. That type of thing. So sometimes you have to put a pause on things so that you can really get a better look at what's going on and then know how to move forward, know what adjustments need to be made so that we can move forward in that divine alignment space. And that's going to be very positive. So I wouldn't worry about anything that feels like it's being delayed during that time. But it is going to give us a chance to take a closer look at ourselves. And this is going to be a time too where we're going to see that help coming through to those that can't afford to help themselves. So that's going to be like our disabled veterans, our seniors, storm damage victims, things like that. They are all probably going to be prioritized in there, and that's a good thing. So if we can cut out wasteful spending or move that then to help the people who actually are in need, who actually um, need the help in there and are not just struggling to help themselves, but aren't really even able to help themselves. That's where we want to direct it. And that is part of bringing financial responsibility into divine alignment in there. And then we need to be patient and embrace the process. And that's not easy. When we're learning lessons and we're going through processes and we're making these shifts, it's not always easy to do. And we need to be patient. So we have to lean into spirit during that time. We need to lean into the soul self during that time and to just take what we can out of the process. What are the lessons that are active and present? What skills am I being given the opportunity to hone? And patience is probably going to be a core one during this time. Again, partnerships are going to be forged to help those in need. So this is where we're going to see some other things come up that is not just helping those in need, but we're going to see where different groups are going to join together to help in there. So we may actually see something come around where, for example, the Amish community in North Carolina, they were excellent about getting down there and putting up a bunch of buildings very fast and very quickly in there. So we could actually see some kind of orchestrated partnership between um, getting help to people and bringing in that community and engaging some of the lumber community or that to work together to all rebuild disaster areas. I think those things are all possibility, and I think that's all going to give optimism for people along the way. And then also in the process of helping those who are truly in need during this time, putting the focus on these types of situations, we're really going to show worth and value. We're going to show and remind people that yes, you, the everyday person, not the high paid executive necessarily or the celebrity or this, you, the everyday person, has worth and value. And so there's going to be dissolving some competition going on. There's going to be a lot of people saying, look, let's get out of all this image and validation from people and all of that, and let's get into the true worth and value. And this is also about strengthening things in our country and our world. And as we do this, we are showing our worth and value as a country. as we reduce the wasteful spending, as we pull the funds from corrupt organizations, we are showing our worth and our value. As we're standing strong and we're increasing the self-sufficiency, we're showing our worth and our value and allowing that to be visible. And so I think we do have a lot of actually very positive things that are coming out during this month, that are going to be feel good things, even though we have these other pieces that are not going to be pleasant to look at in the midst of all of that. So there you go. That is what is happening. Yay, March. There's going to be a little mixture. What can I say? A little mixture of each. Hey, if you've enjoyed getting these insights, I love putting them out because I'm getting feedback that they are helping people, but feel free to drop some comments. I did have a challenge for a while where I was not getting messages, and so I didn't know people had commented on there, but I have learned to go in and check, so I will make sure I will go in and check on a more consistent basis when comments are being made, so that I'm not, all of a sudden finding out 3 months later that a comment was made on one of the videos. So I promise you, I'm going to try to stay more up on that. I've found ways to do that, so I will be looking more into that as we go on, because I don't want you sitting out there with no response or acknowledgement. That's never been my intention in things. But give the channel a like, give it a thumbs up, share it out with other people. And it's great. It's great to have this insight and this foresight and then see how everything plays out. It's not, again, about, hey, predicting a specific outcome on a certain day or something like that. It's the energy currents that matter. It's the being aware of what is present so that we can deal with it and maximize it and get the most amount of good out of those energy currents that we possibly can, and not be sucked in unnecessarily to things that aren't good for us along the way. And again, my book, The Code Journey, right here. You can also find that on my website, compassioncodes.com. And I appreciate all the support. This gives you a heads up way beyond what I go in these videos. And it really will give you an idea on a day-to-day basis. And it's not just about world events, it's about personal growth. And it's about building a world that we can all live in, really, and work in and have a good life in. So with that, I will say goodbye until next month, and I look forward to connecting with you then. Take care.